Welcome to Booked, where two guys tell you about the books they're reading. I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Livia Snedden, Mexican Gothic. That's what we're reviewing this week. So before we get into all that, we did take a week off. Listen, folks, we had a busy run there in July, and it was time for us to take a little bit of a breather. So we did so. But Mexican Gothic everywhere I turn. Mexican Gothic this, Mexican Gothic that, Mexican Gothic TV show, right? So how could we not do that? I am not. Did Apple land Mexican Gothic, or was it HBO? I can't remember.
Oh, I should. I remember seeing it, and I don't recall. So I'm prepped poorly for this.
That's okay, because I didn't even think about it until I was just saying it. It's Hulu. So I missed on both attempts. Hulu grabbed it, which Hulu has actually done some fairly interesting adaptations. Some stuff I've actually enjoyed. Some of their originals. Normal People, which I waxed eloquent about probably 2 or 3 months ago, which I absolutely loved, was great. So good opportunity for this. But now I guess tonight we'll just talk about what we thought of the actual book.
Yeah, and this is something, like Livius was saying, it came up in conversation, definitely with Mallerman. I think it came up in conversation with Paul Tremblay. It seems like everybody's talking about this book when you talk about big books of 2020. And I bought a physical copy, and it didn't come out that long ago, right? Like in June or May or something like that.
Yeah, I believe it came out mid-pandemic.
Yeah, and I got a 5th printing. So It's definitely tearing up the charts. I know
that had to really upset you.
It's fucking killing me. I don't like getting anything other than first printings, but even on Twitter, I think Silvia Moreno-Garcia said something about how long it had been in the New York Times bestseller charts, like in the top 20 or whatever. I think she was like at the 10th or 11th spot for like 13 weeks or something like that. So it's definitely like, this is a hot item, and it wasn't something that we had originally calendared out for this year, but since it was coming up so much, it was like, why not read this? And I think that's what pushed it onto the itinerary for us. So here we go. This is it. We're going to talk about it now. I'm going to start by just reading a quick author bio. Silvia Moreno-Garcia is the author of the novels Mexican Gothic, Gods of Jade and Shadow, Certain Dark Things, Untamed Shore, and a bunch of other books. She's also edited several anthologies, including the World Fantasy Award-winning She Walks in Shadows, a.k.a. Cthulhu's Daughters.
And here is the not as brief synopsis for Mexican Gothic. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin begging for someone to save her from a mysterious doom, Noemi Taboada heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside. She's not sure what she will find. Her cousin's husband, a handsome Englishman, is a stranger, and Noemi knows little about the region. Noemi is also an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, and her chic gowns and perfect red lipstick are more suited for cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing. But she's also tough and smart, with an indomitable will, and she is not afraid. Not of her cousin's new husband, who is both menacing and alluring, not of his father, the ancient patriarch who seems to be fascinated by Noemi, and not even of the house itself, which begins to invade Noemi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. Her only ally in this inhospitable abode is the family's youngest son. Shy and gentle, he seems to want to help Noemi, but might also be hiding dark knowledge of his family's past. For there are many secrets behind the walls of High Place. The family's once colossal wealth and fated mining empire kept them from prying eyes, but as Noemi digs deeper, she unearths stories of violence and madness. And Noemi, mesmerized by the terrifying yet seductive world of High Place, may soon find it impossible to ever leave this enigmatic house behind.
Yeah, so short and to the point, that synopsis.
Yep. Book is still offering synopsis and author bio editing services. Just reach out to us at bookpodcast@gmail.com if you're interested.
Yeah, for sure. I like this synopsis. I feel like it does a pretty good job of, it is a little bit wordy, it goes a little bit long, but there's only a couple of things that I noticed where I was like, as someone who has finished reading the book, I would criticize. But again, they're written for people who haven't read the book yet. So like the funny thing is, though, when you see little things like we were talking about the youngest son of the family who might be hiding information about his family's past, that means he is, right? Like when you read something like that.
Exactly. Yep. It's very possible that he might know more than he's letting on to. Possible. It's possible. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I agree though. The synopsis is pretty spot on. Although I will say that, and again, depending on how far we're able to go in this book and what we're able to talk about, that I don't know that the synopsis leads you to believe this is as dark of a book as it actually winds up being.
Right.
And I say that because at one point it actually says like she's better suited for cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing, which makes me think like Nancy Drew in the Haunted Mansion, right? And yeah, that's definitely not what we're getting with Mexican Gothic. So,
yep.
True to the synopsis, this does kick off with our introduction to Noemi, who is at a soiree of sorts, a party with a young man, a potential suitor of hers, as they're hanging out. So we get kind of a taste of her lifestyle. But pretty soon after that, she's called home by her father, who shares with her that Catalina, her cousin, who is married and living in High Place, has sent a letter that was a little on the disturbing side.
Right. And so it, just to kind of set the scene a little bit, Noemi lives in Mexico City with her father, who has done well for himself, and so she's part of like, the high society. She's like it says, she's a debutante. She's definitely like a socialite type of person. And the story takes place in basically 1950. Like there's not a huge amount of timeline in this story. It doesn't take place over years and years. So at one point in the book, it becomes 1950. So this is 1950 Mexico. She's grown up in Mexico City all her life, and has she's living a life where she doesn't want for things. I don't know if they're like fabulously wealthy, but she is upper class, and the family can afford to send her to universities and stuff like that. And so she's got a very nice kind of set up lifestyle. But her cousin who sends the letter, Catalina, has married and moved to a more rural area, kind of a mountainous area. And so when this letter arrives, like I said in the synopsis, asking to be saved from mysterious doom, her father tasks her with going out to see what's going on. And so very early in the book, our protagonist, Noemi, picks up she lightly protests going away, just because she's got some like tenuous social obligations. But her father thinks that this is a serious enough situation where he needs her to go basically right away to check out and see what's going on.
So we don't see much of her journey, but she does make it to a place that's completely foreign to her. And I know we mentioned it was kind of in the mountains, but this is the house at the top of a mountain that is part of a former mining village. And the house is decrepit and old. There's very little in the way of electricity or modern niceties. And her hosts are a little on the inhospitable side, to say the least. So it's very clear that they don't want her there, that they're accepting her because, they don't have a choice. But she's expected to live well within the rules of the house, which are at times, are arcane, to say the least.
Yeah, it doesn't take long from when she arrives to kind of realize that this isn't going to be the type of lifestyle that she's accustomed to. First of all, it's very cut off from the rest of the world. They're up on a mountainside, so it's very isolated, to the point where like she realizes early on that not all of the house has electric lighting. So candles and oil lamps and stuff are pretty common. But then, yeah, the family itself, the Doyle family, which Catalina married into, it's obvious that like they're not excited about outsiders. But then also they have weird, like, you can't smoke in the house, which you can't smoke in my house. But like,
right. But in the 1950s, though, people would have been smoking in your house
everywhere.
Like, that's
yeah. And like to the point where we don't talk at the dinner table, and noise in general is considered disruptive and rude and everything. So she shows up to visit this cousin, and it becomes clear very quickly that the family that she's visiting is a very controlling, and they have a very specific idea of how people act and what's allowed and what's not allowed.
To get to the cousin, Catalina is and I forget, maybe you can remind me, the family tells Noemi that she's suffering from, I don't remember what the particular malady was.
Tuberculosis was the
tuberculosis. Yep. Yeah. But basically it's kind of an on again, off again. So to go back, between Catalina and the Doyle family, like Noemi can't just visit Catalina whenever she wants, right? So you would think if you're going to visit your cousin, like you just hang out all day with your cousin, and you'd sit out on the porch and have a glass of wine, right, or whatever. Like, her interactions are very limited. When she tries to see Catalina, no, Catalina's resting. Maybe you can see her later tonight or tomorrow, and then it's always for like these brief moments of time. And Catalina kind of goes back and forth between some normalcy of what Noemi is used to from the two of them growing up together, and then sometimes she's kind of distant and maybe even despondent. But it's enough for Noemi to really question the prognosis that she has tuberculosis.
Yeah, and to kind of dip into some of the darkness that Livius alluded to earlier, the letter that prompted Noemi's quick visit to Catalina, she was talking some pretty crazy shit, like about how she thinks that people have it out for her, and without going into crazy details, like insinuating that like there's ghosts or supernatural stuff going on, like there's things in the walls, like that type of thing. Something that a normal sane person wouldn't put in a letter. So when we see Catalina early on, like the thought is, hey, is she just a crazy person? So when you see her lucid and acting normal, it brings into question, well, what is this all about? It gives you this kind of false sense of, hey, maybe it's not as bad. Maybe it is just a malady or something like that early on. But then obviously things don't necessarily stay so innocent.
Right. We talked a little bit about Florence, who's Francis's mom. Francis is the shy guy who might know some things about the history of his family, as alluded to in the synopsis. He's the one that Noemi really bonds with. But he's the one who picks her up, in the car from the train, or how I believe she got there by train. So he's the only friend she has in this venture, in this house at High Place. Virgil, we touched on a little bit, but he's Catalina's husband, and he's Rob put in the notes kind of rapey, which I'm not disagreeing with, but he's a little domineering, and although he's obviously trying to please Noemi from the standpoint of he doesn't want any any particular trouble, it's clear that he's not going to allow her to do anything other than occasionally visit with his wife and send a good report home to her father. Like his whole involvement in her visit is just to make sure that she does what she's supposed to do, which is to report back. They're doing the best they can for Catalina, and she'll probably get better soon, and nothing to see her move along, essentially. But Noemi starts to experience some kind of odd things too, and it starts with growing a little bit here, with a series of dreams that she has.
Livius's favorite thing in the world is dreams in stories. So this had to be painful.
Let me defend the dreams in this story just a little bit without going too far into it. I will say that they were probably better used in this than in most other stories that have dream sequences, and that's all I can say without doing it over at spoiler talk.
So it definitely becomes obvious through her not waking time, Noemi's not waking time, that things are a little bit different than the family would have you believe. And so I'm gonna take a step back really quick to talk about the family, because I don't think we mentioned it. The Doyle family is from England, and they moved to this specific part of Mexico specifically because they're silver miners and they wanted to make a fortune on this silver, this very lucrative silver mine. So they moved. So they're English. They're not also Mexican. And I thought I had a point for going into that. It's just like, it feels like that was something that made my opinion of them, because they're outsiders and they're obviously acting different, and that creates like an automatic bias of maybe that's just culturally they're different, but then when things start getting more and more weird, it's not, you can't blame it on, oh, culturally they're different and they're just assholes or whatever, and that's why they're acting so prickly. Maybe it's something more nefarious. But anyway, so her dreams is when weird stuff starts to happen, where she's dreaming things in the house, as if like almost having a memory and things like that, where another thing is that she it's alluded to the fact that when she was a kid she would sleepwalk, and she starts to experience sleepwalking incidents while she's visiting this house, which hasn't happened in forever. So the content of her dreams plus like her own actions that are coming back, she hasn't done sleepwalking in a long time, are starting to kind of, it seems like they're not worrying her as much as I was worrying, but like it's definitely like hinting that things aren't as they seem.
Yeah. There's a couple other characters that probably bear mentioning. There are two doctors. One works exclusively for the Doyle family and really looks after Howard Doyle, the elder Doyle, who is definitely not well, to say the least. But he's also obviously looking after Catalina. And then there's a town doctor who Noemi reaches out to get a second opinion, and he's not affiliated with the Doyle family. He knows who they are. Everyone knows who they are, in town and stuff, but he has nothing to do with them. And then we have a shamanistic healer person, witch doctor sort of woman in town too. So I guess that would be like a third type of doctor that's also involved in the story that, these characters allow for a little bit of rounding out of the story, I guess.
Yeah. So we're definitely approaching the limits of what we can say about the story, but essentially what we have is Noemi shows up to check on her cousin. The family is trying very hard to make it seem like, hey, everything's okay, this is just some tuberculosis and she'll just sleep a lot until she gets better. And Noemi's like, yeah, I don't really believe that so much. And the people that she can trust are helping her how they can, which is like Francis, like we mentioned earlier, is kind of her ally. Some of the people in town, like the doctor and Marta, who is the healer type witch doctor person, are also helping her a little bit. And so that's the general push of the story, is like she's trying to get to the bottom, amateur sleuth, of what's going on with her cousin. What is this family up to? And kind of get a resolution, save her cousin, as it would be. What I really enjoy is that in addition to this mystery that she's got to solve, you get all of the backstory of the area. There's flashbacks to when the mine, was first active, when the family started using the mine, some calamities that happened around that, some more family history in general. And so she does a great job of fleshing out what this family is and what they're up to, but also like just leaving it a really good mystery throughout. So as clues become uncovered, they almost just kind of lead to more like, well, what the hell does this mean to the bigger story? So I felt like that aspect of the book was really well done.
And this is probably where we need to go into spoiler talk, I think. So we're going to cut over to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/booked, where you can get spoiler talk. So we do this frequently lately for books, but we're going to go over there and talk about all the things we can't. I can tell you I am going to formulate what I can talk about in my wrap-up about things I liked and or didn't like about this book, and that's where all that magic happens. So if you're interested in that, you can do that for $2 a month over at patreon.com/booked, and, you know, whatever other goodies you find from doing that.
And one quick plug, I want to thank Janelle, which is our latest $2 a month patron. So Janelle, thank you for joining up with us. And you're about to experience your first of many, I hope, spoiler talks over on our Patreon.
And we're back from what I honestly thought it was a much longer spoiler talk than I expected. But we did covered some good ground, I think, as always in spoiler talk. It's an improvement. Personally, for me on this podcast, I know we started doing it a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 years ago now, but it really kind of sometimes helps me look at the story in a different way or to kind of solidify some of my thoughts. So hopefully it does the same for you if you are a Patreon contributor at the $2 level or more.
Yeah, it's definitely helped it up our game. And you know what the weird thing is, Livius, and you're not going to believe this, because you mentioned the timeline, I'm going to open up and I'm going to look for the first time we did spoiler talk. I'm going to blow your mind about how long ago that was. You ready for your mind to be blown?
I am ready.
The first spoiler talk was December 2nd, 2015.
Oh, wow. We're coming up on 5 years of spoiler talk. Holy shit.
Yeah. So...
yeah, it's something that, quite honestly, like I said, on a personal level, because become my one of my favorite parts of this podcast. And I know we do it for a small number of people, and it's not why I'm saying it. It's just you just don't realize how much you don't get out of it until you can openly discuss it.
Yep. And now we're going to summarize those thoughts with wrap-ups. Do you want to go, or should I take it?
I will go first. I wasn't sure what to expect from this. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, obviously a lot of hype. Saw a lot of it on social media, talked to other authors who were really excited about it, having either read it or were very much looking forward to it. But I do like Gothic horror. I think this is the Romanian in me, right? That Gothic horror, if it comes up, I'm always like, yep, I can do Gothic horror. Let's do that. So it's a category I look forward to enjoying. My ratings were a little all over the place, and it's a little weird. I talked about this a lot in spoiler talk. This is the book, for me, at least this year, that I thought had the highest potential that let me down in a few categories. So I was like, I overall liked the characters, but felt that some of them were a little underdeveloped for my taste. I love the concept, but I thought it was rolled out in a kind of murky, muddy way for my taste. I mentioned earlier dream sequences, and I'll be honest, I don't think this spoils anything. The dream sequences are how some of this is revealed to us, and I didn't like that vehicle for it. I mentioned over in spoiler talk, I almost rather would have had the, and tropey. I found a journal buried in the wall that explains to me all these weird things that, we got through the course of the book. But overall concept really, really great. And I just thought the delivery was a little lackluster. I loved the conclusion, so I gave the conclusion a high score. I gave the plot a very high score. Where I dinged it, and I don't even know if this is the right place, was pace, because I feel like this book should have been 70 to 100 pages longer, and it could have rounded out some of the things that I didn't care for as much as I should. But overall, even with some pretty hard dings in those areas, it still came out to a 7.38 for me, which overall I enjoyed it. I just thought this had the potential to be a 9.
So the interesting thing I find about that, and this is something that I've noticed sometimes with your wrap-ups or your just thoughts on books in general, Livius, is that books can definitely get a lower score because you wanted more of the stuff that you liked that you didn't get. So like, it's not a good thing, but it's a good ding if you're basically saying, hey, I wanted more of it because you were enjoying what you got. You just needed extra stuff. So
for sure. Yep.
That's interesting. And I guess like too, that goes to even a good book might not be a perfect book, but it's still a good book. I think 7.38 is a respectable rating. And I came in pretty close to that. So I'll just start out by saying that I gave it 8 out of 10. Me and Livius were pretty consistent in a lot of the categories that we break down our reviews into. I thought the conclusion was very good. The plot I gave so we basically liked the exact same things. I just scored some things a little bit higher than he did. Overall, so this is one of those books where I feel it's got a lot of character and personality, and this benefits from just being very well written. It's obvious that she's a very proficient writer who knows how to put a good story together, and you know, she's got all the right ingredients to make the good recipe. And it was just a great ride. It concluded in a very satisfying way. The story was one of those where I was absolutely throughout the story predicting to myself where it was going to go and what certain things meant. And I love those types of stories the most, where it keeps you guessing, but it also keeps you caring enough that you're invested in it. So overall, man, lot to like about this book. And I definitely see myself reading more from Silvia Moreno-Garcia again, and a little regretful that she's had so many books out already, and I had not heard about her before. So like I said, 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed this book.
Before we get off the subject, yeah, it's weird because I haven't heard of any of our other books either.
Yeah.
And so this one, I'm not sure what transpired to get this one on everybody's lips. I have to assume that you know, at least some of these books were written over the last, you know, 9 years that we've been doing this weekly, you know, and right. The name just didn't sound at all. I honestly, until you read the bio, I thought or I actually read it at the end of the book, you know what I mean? But I thought this was a debut novel. So yeah. I'm glad she got somewhere New York Times bestseller list with this one. I mean, it's worthy in that weird way that I said. Like I believe it's on the New York Times bestseller list. I believe there's a good reason for it.
Yeah, I'm looking through now. Like, it's just maybe it's just the type of stuff, because like it looks like there's kind of a Lovecraftian bent to some of the stuff that she writes, and haven't gone that far into Lovecraftian stuff, so maybe that has something to do with it. But she goes back to, like, she's got short stories in like back in 2011 and stuff. So yeah, she did win a World Fantasy Award, and I don't know how many books we've read that were even eligible for a World Fantasy Award. It's definitely not something you or I really take to. Right. And that's the weird thing, because like, you know, you could argue that there's a strong fantasy element to the Neil Gaiman stuff that we've read, but it's not something that we go seeking out for sure. So I think it's just one of those, like, this was the happy convergence of what we read and who's recommending books. For sure. I mean, I feel this is a good place to pivot. It came up right before we started recording, and you had said she's written some Lovecraftian stuff. So I feel like you want to tell us a little bit about a new TV show you've been watching. Yeah, so the second episode airs tonight, probably already as we're recording this. Lovecraft Country is a new HBO series that just started the week before we're recording this. So like I said, second episode is tonight, and it's basically, I'm sure a lot of the people that are listening to this already know about it, but it is a Jim Crow era, that's when it takes place, story about a couple of black families who basically discover that they're tied up in this kind of ancient thing, and they have like some sort of birthright to it's the first episode really was a lot of setup. So like the stinger at the end was like, oh, what's this weird shit that's going on? But like, so it's tied in with Lovecraftian creatures and stuff. I didn't read the book, so it's based on a book called Lovecraft Country, and there are elements. So they have to travel to Massachusetts from, I think it's Chicago. Yeah, it's Chicago. and when they get to the place they're going, there are like monsters and stuff in the forest. So there's like there's a monster element to it. So there's definitely supernatural shit going on. But it's set against like the Jim Crow era, so it's very heavily analyzing like racial tension and stuff, which I thought is great because, and I think that this is going to be a theme that we see a lot, is Lovecraft was a huge racist, and so taking that thing that that he did, that people, you know, it was obviously revolutionary for horror and everything, and making it so that it's okay to use because it's through a different lens. So it's not, oh, we're reading this racist guy's stuff. It's, we're taking this and we're making it something different. So I like that kind of aspect of it.
I always found it was a strange dichotomy with Lovecraft and, kind of horror fantasy fans. So I know Jordan Peele's involvement is an executive producer is the most likely reason. I'll wait until it's all over to see what the reviews are, because in case you didn't know it, that guy ruined the Twilight Zone. In case you hadn't heard from anybody else or heard it before,
I hear it once a week.
How mad there's even a goddamn second season of it. I don't think I went on a rant about that. I did not see a lot about it, and it's on HBO, right?
Yeah.
So I might have to wait until that hits the Netflix. I don't have a HBO Now, Go, whatever. They have like 4 different apps, I think. So I don't know. Can I talk about the one thing I'm excited about?
Before you jump away from that, I'm just going to say real quick, and then you can talk about the thing you're excited about. This is one of the things I love about new HBO shows, is that there's also a companion podcast. So every episode of the TV show has a corresponding podcast episode. So you kind of get like behind the scenes, and you get to hear the kind of the motivations of what made them decide to do things the way they did. And I fucking love that. I think every TV show should have that. So just want to say that. But yeah, what's got you so excited?
I want to. All right, so I want to address that because I don't know how I feel about that. I know you've mentioned it because it was Chernobyl, and then I feel like there was something else that you were talking about there being a companion.
I'll be gone in the dark. Yeah.
Yeah. I go back to this. I spent like the Doctor Who reboot from, I don't know, 15 years ago or whatever. I just remember seeing an interview with one of the actors and just being like, nope, I think I just want them to be actors. Like sure. The Chernobyl one I could get because that was historical fiction. You know what I mean? So if I'm like, all right, so I get to hear about like the actual people. Like the interesting thing about Chernobyl was like there were like 30 scientists and they were all condensed into that one woman.
Right.
That was like you know what I mean? So like I could see from a historical standpoint. But in a fiction story, I almost feel like I just want to be immersed in the story, and I don't want to hear about. So I don't know. Maybe at some point, if I get into a show, I'll give that a shot, because I know you speak very highly of it, and you and I typically like to ingest the same, kind of types of storytelling. So maybe I would benefit from that with the right show.
Yeah, possibly.
Now that we've had that deep conversation about that, fucking, I am. Scrolling through my news feed on my phone, and by news feed it just pulls different things that I've searched for and stuff, right? So once in a while, like I have to tell it like 4 different times, no, I'm not interested in this thing, because it was like a one-time thing I looked up, but it keeps giving me that information. But it was on Friday night. I get in my news feed that there is. Are you familiar with Coheed and Cambria?
I know. Is it a musical? I think it's a musical group. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I've always thought they were very talented, but they're kind of weird songwriters. But there's a few songs I really, really like from them. But I see something that says Coheed and Cambria, Jesse's Girl, the number 2 after it, featuring Rick Springfield.
Oh, no.
So I go, holy shit, Coheed and Cambria of a Flavor House Atlantic and The Suffering, which I think are just brilliant songs. They wrote a goddamn sequel to a song by a different artist. So I was very excited about this. The song is interesting. The video is really cute. Rick Springfield actually does a cameo, kind of sings the, like, I don't know, like the bridge part of the song, right? But it all ties back to this, I don't know, 40-year-old song. And it's a sequel to a song, which, I know very briefly we talked about this with Josh Miller, but I think you completely tuned out. We were talking about songs as storytelling.
Right.
And I just thought it was fascinating that they continued a story from 40 years ago by a different artist in song form. So these little 3-minute stories can be extended years and years later. And I find the concept really interesting. I'm not much of a music guy, if I'm being honest. You're probably far more into music than I am. But I did find this absolutely endearing.
So I am not trying to ruin this moment for you, but since it's a story, basically, the Jesse's Girl, you're saying it's kind of got a story aspect to it. What's the story? Because I don't.
Right, so the song Jesse's Girl is just about him. He's in love with his friend's girlfriend, is what it is, right? So it's just him kind of questioning why he isn't good enough, why she's not interested in him, why she's with this guy, and him kind of fantasizing about their life together. Mm-hmm. Jesse's Girl 2 flashes forward many, many years, and it's him looking back like he got the shot. Like his dream came true. He wound up hooking up with this girl, but it went horribly wrong because she's fucking nuts.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So again, are they, they're stories you tell in 3 minutes with like 3 verses and a repetitive course, right? So there's not a lot to get out of a story typically. But there's some great songs out there that can tell a hell of a story in a really short period of time, I think. I'm not saying that Jesse's Girl is the one for that. I don't think that's a perfect example, but.
Well, I just had an idea, and I'm going to pitch it to you, and you can tell me it's a terrible idea. Okay. But now I'm thinking that there's a song that exists that could be like Jesse's perspective after the part 2 happens, and that's Mr. Brightside.
Oh, there you go. The Killers. By the way, the new Killers album, awful. Everything awful. No. Terrible. Oh my God, I don't know what happened to one of the greatest bands of all time.
Oh no, Mr. Brightside though. Do you see what I'm saying? Like how?
Yes. Oh no. Yeah. Absolutely. But that's we don't typically think of them that way. But every now and then, man, I hear a song and I go, "Holy shit, man! This person took me on an emotional roller coaster ride over the course of like 3.5 minutes." And we read 300 fucking page books that don't manage to do the same thing. So when done right, they can be impactful.
Oh man. So I just thought of something and I'm going to tell you, like, have you heard the phrase, let people enjoy things?
No. I mean, I think I understand what it means because it seems pretty simple.
It means exactly what it sounds like, but it's used when you'll understand. I'm going to tell you right now and you'll understand why I said that first. So the new trailer for the new Batman movie with Robert Pattinson came out, and so many people are so excited about it. I thought it was pretty garbage, and so I had that instinct inside of me to just go online and shit on it, and that's when let people enjoy things, kind of kicked into my head.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Because what benefit would that be for the world if I voiced a negative opinion about something? So I'm not going to trash. I'm going to let them enjoy their thing. I'm very happy for everybody who's excited about this movie, but there's one fucking sin I can't forgive. Have you seen the trailer?
No, I have. It's on my list to see, but DC movies haven't really provided a lot of excitement for me other than the Joker. So
yeah. So, they use a Nirvana song in the trailer because, every trailer now has to take an old song and make it quirky. Yeah. And that's and because it's iconic, but it's our quirky version, so it's different. And so they used the Nirvana song "Something in the Way," and thematically, I don't see why they use that. And it's just it's just very insulting to me that they chose to use that song. And so I'm gonna let everybody enjoy their thing, but I have to say, really not happy that they used that Nirvana song.
It's interesting that you say that because I've noticed that there have been a lot of remade songs in TV shows. Yeah. And I was actually wondering if it's cheaper to license a remake. And that's why, because it seems really, really prevalent now that you would hear a song and you go, oh, this song sounds really familiar, but it's always done in a, like you said, a quirky or maybe it's a song that was like a pretty strong song, but it's been really pulled back, and now it's
Right.
just like one light piano behind some singing instead of like a guitar and drums.
Right, like a haunting voice or something like that.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a licensing issue.
That's a good point, because like, and I don't know anything about the music industry, but I'm fairly certain that you can do, like, you don't have to license a song to do a cover of it, I don't think. So like, maybe, and music execs that are listening can correct me on this.
Josh Mallerman can chime in at any time now. Yeah.
But yeah, like if you get a band does their version of Yellow Submarine and you want to license that, you're probably licensing it from that band and have nothing to do with the Beatles. So you're getting it for a steal, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the only reason I could think of that it's so, because like that's work, right? Like nobody's, I don't think anybody's like, hey, we really want to use this song, but can we find an artist to record it in a really low key way instead of, the way that people know it? It seems like a lot of work to close out a weekly ABC show or something, It's
interesting. I never thought about that, but there's something to that thought.
I don't know. At some point during a future interlude, I plan on bringing some great story songs to discuss. I think that might be fun for an interlude.
That would be amazing for an interlude. I'm going to have to make a note of that. This is a random Rob's life thing, but because I just said I'm going to make a note of that, I've been starting to take notes of random, like, I found that I have a lot of thoughts right before I fall asleep, as opposed to like right when I wake, dreams I want to take notes on. Mm-hmm. And so like I've started taking notes on those. So they're awful, but I find them they're going to be a thing that like, years from now I go back and I read this stupid note and I'm like, what the fuck was wrong with me? So I can give you an example.
Sure.
This is a little bit NSFW, but this is a legit thought I had. I was raised by a single mother, which has never been a problem for me, but now I don't know what to do with girls who have a daddy kink.
That's actually fairly insightful, I think. I mean, what I would say is I would just stay away from those girls in general if I was giving you advice, but yeah, or I'd give you a list of things you could probably do.
Yeah, that's
if you want to go different. Yeah, it's like
I need a father figure to help me figure out what to. No, but like, what if you're dating someone and you only discover the daddy kink later?
That's true. Yeah.
So, yeah.
The problem with, because I would occasionally do that too, and not necessarily at night, but just random thoughts I'd have. But then sometimes, like I use the Google Keep app for stuff, like sometimes for like really weird passwords that I have to use like once a year at work, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But there's also just like random notes in there. Like someone will be like, oh, you got to check out this TV show. But I'll look and I'll be like, oh, okay, what is this? And I'll go, oh, this is a TV show. Rob must have told me to watch it. But then there are notes I had on thoughts where I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck this means.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So it's like 2 or 3 words. I'm like, I don't know what this is referencing. I have no idea what this is. So I could only imagine if I was doing that as I was falling asleep at night, I'd have a lot more. I have no idea what this references.
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've seen notes from myself like that where I'm like, what the fuck was I even saying?
Yeah. Yep. So, but it does make it in some cases can make for good, solid entertainment.
Yep.
Like your weird daddy kink thought.
It's probably swiping through Tinder.
Yeah, probably. All right, I think that's a good place to put this one down. Unsure if there's going to be an episode next week or not. So for anybody who is not aware, Rob is upgrading his abode. I'll translate that for the rest of you. Rob's moving to a bigger place. So we're not sure what the internet situation will be or, whatever. So there may or may not be an interlude type episode next week. But if there is not an episode next week, 2 weeks from right now, you will be getting the first in a series of 4 book reviews, probably with some author interviews spread throughout. And Rob probably knows what that next book is.
Yeah, so September's interesting, and this next book that you're going to get is Olivia's thing. Suzanne Clark has a book coming out called Piranesi. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's the next one that we're going to read. And this is very driven on the fact that Livius has read and enjoyed previous stuff from that author. I'm pretty in the dark about it.
That's okay. I'm going to slight correction there. I did watch a long TV adaptation of one of her books, and that's where that came from. I did not read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell because I think it's like 1,000 pages. But I did watch I believe it was a BBC adaptation that I really, really enjoyed. So I'm looking forward. If it's anything like that, I think it'll be an enjoyable book for us to read and to discuss. But yeah, I mean, we've also got another Craig Walwork book, the second one of this year.
Yeah, he's really churning them out.
Yeah. So the second in the Tom Nolan book, those are coming up. We've got The Loop by Jeremy Robert Johnson later on in September. And like I said, I imagine we'll catch a couple interviews in that month too. So if we take next week off, please remember it's A, because Rob's moving, and B, because we have to get ready for another just crazy month of book reviews that'll look a lot like July for those of you that were paying attention back then.
Yep. But for now, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks, Silvia Moreno-Garcia, for a very entertaining book. Join us next time, whenever that happens to be, for some more stuff. Until then, I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Livius Nedden. Keep reading.